Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And, Bill, it's really interesting to see what's happening with social media and with the propagation of, in air quotes here, facts and experts in particular.
Yes.
And I want to just set up for our listeners, the impetus for this is the day before we're recording this video went viral on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and it was purported to be a panel of doctors in lab coats on the steps of the Supreme Court talking about the virus, and it was a counter message to what the CDC is saying and all the experts of Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. Basically saying that no one needs to wear masks and there is a cure for the virus. It's hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, which is an antibiotic, along with zinc. And it was really sharing this message. Well, that video got taken down by every platform, and it isn't just one platform that was an outlier. This video was deemed to have violated the policies of all the platforms, and they took it down. And a lot of people are very upset about this because they're like, how can these doctors' opinion be squashed? How can these doctors sharing their experience violate community standards? And what there's an article that I'm going to post in the blog post here just so people can see. Basically, all of them found that this particular video was perpetrating what they would call, false information, that they were saying, it didn't just violate community standards, but they're saying that there's a cure. And in fact, that those claims run contrary to multiple studies and scientific studies that say that it's not a cure. There is no cure. And so this was false information and they all took it down. So, but the bigger question is really, who's an expert?
Yeah.
And who's
an
not?
expert? Yeah. How do you get to be the person whose weight, gets to count more than other people's weight because your expertise, has risen to the place of above opinion. It has a solid ground to stand on based on facts and research and skill. And the things that you're saying can be proved. That means whatever you're saying can be duplicated. And there is enough evidence behind what you're selling to validate that what you're selling has worth. So the hard part about expertise is that with the internet, what has happened is there's been a unique experience of just because you posted something on your Facebook, all of a sudden you get a boost that these people like me. therefore it's true. That's the problem with truth. It boosts because you're following is saying yes to you. You wrote something wise down. You wrote something that made meaning to another person, that created agreement. So we're having a little bit of trouble with truth because what winds up getting hijacked along with truth is trust. I'm extending trust to a person in a lab coat because what they're telling me is that, 4 out of 5 doctors say, 4 out of 5 dentists say that this thing does this thing, and the person looks pretty official in that lab coat. So I am going to trust the lab coat. And my truth, it might not be in alignment with truth.
Well, that's the thing that keeps getting me, Bill, is there's a difference between belief and opinion and truth, and especially now when it comes to expertise. I mean, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who said, "Yeah, you're an expert after you have spent 10,000 hours doing something again and again and again."
Right. That there's a certain expertise there. Mm-hmm.
Experience and expertise, I mean, definitely come from, similar roots here. And, when I'm going to have a major surgery, I want to know that the doctor's done it thousands of times before.
How many surgeries have you done? How many, surgeries have you done of this type? What's your track record on this thing? What are some of the things you learned about this? How do you, know what's going on inside my body in order to do a heart surgery or a shoulder surgery or, a hernia mesh or whatever? What kind of expertise do you have?
Well, and there's a reason they call, medical businesses a practice a lot of the time, because these doctors are practicing and building up their 10,000 hours and then hopefully serving people long after they have 10,000 hours of practice, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. The word practice is so fundamental. It's a T-ball player that's learning how to play baseball. They're 5 years old, and you stick the ball in the tee, and they swing at this ball that's just sitting there and trying to get these two little arms of a 5-year-old to swing a bat to hit a ball that's sitting right there in front of them, and to keep their eye on the ball and let the bat make contact with the ball and let it go in a direction that is going to put the ball in play. So that's the first part of a practice. Now, the sentence "practice makes perfect" is not a strong sentence. Perfect practice makes perfect. You've actually got to be concentrating on not just doing the same thing over and over again, but doing something over and over again and perfecting the practice. Tom, you and I can make scrambled eggs, but it doesn't mean that the scrambled eggs are going to taste as good as some of these other chefs that have perfected or worked on perfecting just this amount of salt, just these kinds of eggs, just these kinds of other spices or ingredients in order to get the flavor to show up like that. Then they're an expert. The chef is a person that has expertise. Their practice, their culinary practice has brought them somewhere. Now watch the number. I'll watch all these things I'm going to put right after that. Their culinary practice, somebody that is a minister has a spiritual practice. A monk has a spiritual practice. Doesn't mean they're any good at it. They're just practicing the thing, right? And an attorney that gets the thing, and they're in their 20s, and they hung a sign outside, and they've started their their attorney practice, their legal practice has begun. And then with the doctor, they hang a sign out, and then you extend trust as they start their practice and they're 25 or 30. And they might be a good surgeon. They might be really a smart surgeon, but it doesn't mean that they've perfected their practice in surgery.
True. I think the same thing happens with attorneys. You know, when I started in business, I was 27 or 28 years old with my first business.
Gosh, a business practice.
Well, yeah. And boy, do I wish I knew everything I knew today about business back then in the late 90s, because that's when I was starting out. But I had, like any business, I had to hire an attorney. You have to have an attorney on your team to do things in business. And the attorney I hired was my age. He was in his, about 27, 28 at the time. And I knew I was getting an attorney that did not have a lot of experience. But I also was paying a rate that was much lower than I would be paying for somebody with a lot of experience. So I knew I had trade-offs, and I knew, well, at least he's been educated in the law. And you know what? There are other people at his firm with more experience. If he needs to lean on them, this is a good fit for me in business now to pay this lower rate to have at least some legal people on my side. Today, I pay a lot more for an attorney, somebody that has an awful lot of experience, because I don't want to gamble. I want more certainty.
Right. You're paying for the time. You're paying for their time. So there's 3 tenets of trust. If we get into this thing, when we get into this, it's the 3 tenets of trust is, does the person have knowledge? Now there's the knowledge in 2 pieces. The knowledge can be through a degree, but thinking about my degree when I got it, and the different degrees that I have, gives me a slice of knowledge. But am I practicing gaining knowledge in that area of communication? Yeah, I'm reading all the time. I just read a wonderful book this weekend on tyranny, and we're going to talk about that next episode or so, because it's about how language creates tyranny. Well, as a communication podcast that's pursuing truth, I better know something about how language causes tyranny if I'm going to sit here and just have some kind of experience and claim an expertise, so that at least I'm holding down my version of truth. Now you could say, oh, that book was written by a professor, as if the non-professor has some expertise that is greater than the professor does. The internet has allowed a person to consistently learn and develop a practice of reading, not a practice of quality learning or relying on quality sources. It's very unsettling. Okay, so the first tenet is knowledge. It's got 2 prongs to it. Do I have some kind of degree or expertise or some kind of knowledge or things? And then the second one is am I a person that's consistently learning in my field? Am I doing that? And that person I'm going to extend trust to. And I am going to look at that expertise and say, hey, there's some truth to it, because what have you done lately? And a lot of professions have continuing education things to do to keep your certification or your degree or your diploma valid. You have to do X number per year of continuing education, or otherwise you can't keep this thing that we gave you. You have to lose it. All right. Number 2, experience. Knowledge is 1, experience is 2. Is the person on the court playing the game, or are they in the stands yelling at the professional player? just because you're in the stands does not give you experience at being on the court. You could be in the stands, but your voice is not one that counts more than the person that's been on the course, on the court. So experience has to do, have you played the game? Have you coached the game? And while you were there, were you any good at it? Did you win anything?
Yeah, I mean, just because I ride on a plane 150,000 miles a year, because I fly 150,000 miles a year around the world, obviously pre-pandemic.
Great example.
Doesn't mean I can fly the plane or land the plane if there was a problem.
Tom, you have experience of flying, though, don't you? The answer is no. I'm sorry. I'm not putting Tom behind the
No,
hey,
I have experience riding on the plane. I know how to do that.
Right. Yeah. And you started the thing with the 10,000 hours to get this thing, but you also have the intention for pursuing a perfect practice, and or the intention of that your practice is going to be upon your knowledge, that your experience is going to stack. But right now on the internet, just because you put somebody in a lab coat and you show a video, it doesn't mean truth is there. It just means that there is observable a group of people in lab coats talking about something that looks kind of official, that they're hijacking the person's belief, they're hijacking the person's bias.
Well, and those people in that video may very well have their own belief that a combination of hydroxychloroquine, zinc, and azithromycin is a cure. But I think one thing we can probably all agree on, anybody listening to this, and if I were trying to throw empathy at anybody who believes in that, I mean, we can probably all understand that coronavirus is fairly new on this earth, at least our experience with it, the COVID-19 virus. And there has not been a lot of time for anybody to have 10,000 hours of experience with it, or for there to have been all kinds of major, studies complete that. And in fact, any studies that have been done suggest that there's at least, they're not saying these things aren't a cure, but there's certainly not enough evidence to say that they are a cure. So just the whole idea of experience and a long experience with something, there hasn't been enough time on this earth to determine conclusively many things about this virus, let alone that this combination of three things is a cure.
Correct. Now, here's the scary honesty. You and I are bringing that opinion forward. And there are people that are doctors that could listen to this and say, what are these two yahoos saying about it not being it? What evidence are they moving off of in order to get that? And that one is the one that's really, really tough, because at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, there were all kinds of drugs that they were trying to throw at people with AIDS. All kinds of things that they were trying. And media was trying to not go too far back then. They had a certain sense of restraint and research to go like, we can't start promoting something that's not a fit until some more research came in. Now where part of our nation is trying to find something that is going to be helpful and is going to provide some prevention for this unique virus. You and I are sitting, I would go like midway up in the stands, or maybe a little closer to the front, but we are not in the front row of this game. And by the way, the people in the front row of any NBA basketball cannot leave that seat and walk onto that court. They can claim, because I was closer, I saw how the whatever athlete you want to name right now did the behind back pass, allowed the other player to dunk.
Sure.
I mean, they can't do it.
Yeah, let's just say it this way. So two of the probably most famous basketball fans that I can think of, you certainly wouldn't put Jack Nicholson or Spike Lee on the court to score for you, right?
Right. They have their 10,000 hours of watching, but they don't have the 10,000 hours of playing. They don't have the perfect practice that goes along with that 10,000 hours of playing. And their experience is not necessarily the truth about what it takes to be an NBA player just by sitting on the sideline. The idea around experience is my experience is truth. Therefore, my experience is fact. Our internet is allowing that sentence to exist. That's problematic for truth because it doesn't allow the third step to come in. It doesn't allow us to have any wisdom. Now, all of a sudden, the listeners are going to be very quiet. Oh, we're not getting wisdom right now. And the answer is no, we're not getting any wisdom right now. What we are doing is getting little tidbits of knowledge and tidbits of proposed experience. I don't know, just take this drug. It's like, there's not wisdom in that.
Oh, yeah. What did the president say? What have you got to lose?
What have you got to lose? Just take it.
Yeah.
And the answer is, the wisdom is, it doesn't work fully. It is a shot in the dark. It is a gamble. It is, here's this basketball, and yeah, there are miraculous shots that can be made both professionally and unprofessionally by a person throwing a ball at half court or 3/4 court or the length of the court, and the ball goes in. But there's not wisdom in throwing that shot all the time. That's not a wise shot. So
it involves a lot of luck, quite honestly. And I guess that's the difference is that, that's why there actually have been studies on this hydroxychloroquine and all that show that, it creates heart arrhythmias and elevates liver enzymes that are not, helpful.
Right.
And in fact can be dangerous. But I'm sure there are some doctors who, like you said, were taking a shot because somebody is so sick, they're about to die.
Take a shot, man.
And they're trying to do anything they can for this patient. And I admire that. And you know what? If that patient is on death's door, why not take a shot? I mean, in that situation, there may be nothing to lose. Right. But if somebody happens to improve, it may just be that the results happened.
They're rallying for other factors. They're rallying by other factors. They had something else happen inside their body. Their body immune system clicked on in a certain way, and they bounced back. It wasn't the drug. It was the will to live. As if this hasn't happened like a bazillion times in the human experience. As the person comes back miraculously from cancer, even though they are right at death's door. I mean, why? Because the will to live can activate the immune system to fight for the body, and then everything else outside of it has a little bit of superfluous nature to it because the body's working. Now, see, the 3 tenets, though, of trust, knowledge, experience, and wisdom are also the 3 tenets that are necessary for self-worth. My knowledge brings some worth to me. My experience brings some worth to me. And my wisdom brings some worth to me. I can get paid on those 3 levels. you're going to love this. You're going to love this. Your attorney that you hired, the young guy, you are paying them for knowledge, not necessarily experience and not necessarily wisdom. But now the attorney you hire has the knowledge and some experience and some more wisdom. Whether they have enough wisdom or not, that is problematic because you don't know the scope of their perception or their perspective. Okay, so
that is so troubling that those same things that would be indicators of expertise are also requirements for self-worth.
And if a person doesn't have self-worth, they don't have knowledge, they don't have experience, they don't have wisdom, they can sell, trust me, and you can push in their direction that they have those three things, but really they don't.
Well, I think that's what a lot of people were very upset about when this video got taken down of these, people in lab coats on the Supreme Court, is that,
yes,
how can their experience be quashed? How can what they have to say be so bad? Well, unfortunately, they made claims that there is a cure and you don't need to wear masks, and that those statements are not in alignment with the truth, so much so. And even what I said before, which is that none of us have enough experience with this virus to know everything about it and to be experts.
That's right.
There is enough experience with certain aspects of the virus. There have been studies that really do say that these things are not a cure. And so these different social media platforms cannot allow that message, which was very black and white. There is a cure. Here it is. Don't wear masks. It's not necessary. It violated their community standards and they had to pull it down.
Okay, so over the first part of this thing, we've laid out this foundation regarding expertise. There's a knowledge piece to it. There's an experience piece to it, and there's a wisdom piece to it. Okay, well then, why then are people getting hijacked and arguing with things like masks and arguing things like medication, or creating a counter story about, hey, this is the deep state. Hey, this is, QAnon. Hey, this is whatever conspiracy thing that we did last week. It's like, why are they doing it? So let's do something helpful here. How do you have empathy for that person that has pushed their truth has been purchased from them because they've pushed this person got elected, or this person is rich, therefore they must have knowledge, they must have experience, they must have wisdom. I think wisdom, how do you measure these things? If you're measuring wisdom, you listen to what the person says and ask yourself the question, was that a very wise thing that person just said? And if the answer is no, that was not very wise, you do not try to fight or justify because that person's on your side. You then claim your identity back from that person and say, that doesn't meet my conservative values. That doesn't meet my need for truth. Instead of saying, well, he's a Republican and I'm a Republican, therefore it must be a wise thing. There must be some truth to it. No, there's no truth to it at all. There's no wisdom. There's not any experience. And the person clearly doesn't have the knowledge about how this test works or how this other thing works. They don't know that there's a cognitive decline test. It's not a test that proves you're a stable genius.
Yes.
That's not the test. The test is not stable genius. I mean, if Trump pulled off a Mensa test and pulled off an IQ of whatever demonstrates that he has the ability to have knowledge, does not mean, this is good, Tom, does not mean the person with the high test score has the experience on the court and has the ability to have perspective in order to be a leader. They don't have that. You and I, Tom, you and I both know that there are smart people that don't have the experience or wisdom to be leaders.
Absolutely.
All over the place.
Of course.
It's like, what is this person doing in this spot? Because they might have some attributes, but they do not have knowledge and or experience and or wisdom. And this is what's really missing, in when there is a Senate hearing. There's not a strong discussion of knowledge. Well, they get caught in the knowledge box. They get caught in the experience box, but they don't get to the wisdom box. Do you have the wisdom to run this position? And they're going like, huh? Wisdom? I was a big donor. That's why I'm running this thing. I don't have any wisdom.
Right.
Well, what's the range of your experience? See, they'll try to find something to amplify in the first two because they happen to have money, or they happen to have some kind of power, or they came from a good family that was a big donor. I'm making some stuff up, but all of the things that I just said have a very strong truth to it, is that we have people that are in charge that don't have wisdom.
Absolutely we do. No question.
Right? How am I going to put Ben Carson in charge of housing when he has knowledge and a degree, but not in housing? Experience, limited. Wisdom, not much in housing. So he's smart enough to read, but he is way behind on his ability to get on the court and play. He's in the nosebleed seats for housing.
Right.
That's the way we've got to start thinking about this. Instead of letting the party's identity make the pick, you want your civil servants to have wisdom, knowledge, and experience. They got to have all three in order to make a impact in a distance.
Well, and it's when it comes to things like, infectious diseases, there's a reason why Dr. Anthony Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx, these people were put on this task force because guess what? They've got decades upon decades of experience. They have all those three components: knowledge, experience, and wisdom from well over 10,000 hours of practice. That's why they are the ones that were appointed to help guide the country on this.
So now here's the unsettling sentence, as if we don't have another one of these suckers, right? If a person has perspective, they also have a part in their consciousness as a part of wisdom, that they're humble to know that they don't know. They're humble enough to say, I don't know. We don't know enough about that, which causes the need for certainty not to be met for people who are scared, which then causes them to feel doubt instead of still extending trust through the experience of doubt. It's because I have doubt, I'm going to the person that's confident, not the person that is wise. I'm going to the person that is confident. I'm not going to the person that's wise.
So that's why people have latched on to Trump saying it's just going to go away on its own.
That's it. That's right. That's why they're pushing truth in that direction. That's why it's just going to go away. And he said it. I mean, he says it really out loud. It's not like there's any mystery. He says, eventually I'm going to be right.
Well, eventually,
eventually you're in the stands and your team is going to win. Eventually your team's going to win. They're going to have a good game. You're going to enjoy the experience of being in the bleachers, but you have no business on the court. You have no business because you can't make the pass. You can't make the shot. You can't get your body in the positions. You're not fast enough. You're not tall enough. You're not smart enough. Eventually, it's eventually is not a wisdom sentence. It's actually his experiences. Well, that's actually his experience. Eventually, I'll get fired from this job. Eventually, I can file bankruptcy. And I have so much money, it's not really going to touch my lifestyle at all. So eventually, he can run out the clock because his confidence is built upon having the truth being able to be purchased, because the belief that somebody that has money is a smart person, that belief bias and that fallacy is in place. I believe that because he's confident that he owns knowledge, experience, and wisdom, his inflated self-worth and identity inflates my self-worth and identity. It's not true, but that doesn't matter in the voting booth. I'm not pursuing truth.
Well, that's the scary part, isn't it, Bill? That while you can't become a doctor without studying and practicing to a set of standards that where then you have earned the credential of MD, of doctor, at least even before having 10,000 hours of practice out there in the real world. When it comes to our elected officials and appointments around the world of ambassadorships and all sorts of things, ambassadorships are easier. You just have to be a friend of the person that gets to choose, and maybe a donor. But if you're if you're running for office, Senate, House, or governorship, or the president of the United States, all you got to do is convince enough people to vote for you. It doesn't matter if you're an expert or not. That's pretty scary how we've set up our system in that way.
And some people are up to it, by the way. Some people are up to making the transition to gain knowledge and experience and wisdom. My favorite example of this one is Shirley Temple.
Okay.
Shirley Temple as the child actress.
Yes.
And then she got married, Shirley Temple Black.
Right.
And she got promoted in politics to be an ambassador. I don't remember where she was an ambassador. That is lost on me. But what happens is what she used to say is, the little girl got me here, and it was up for the adult to allow me to stay here. And so what she did is work her butt off to gain the knowledge, experience, and wisdom, and she stayed there in those positions. No one moved her because she was so darn good at it. She figured out the role and stepped into it.
So don't get me wrong, experts have to come from somewhere, and you can be very good at becoming an expert in something even later in life, but you have to really apply yourself. You have to buckle down. You have to want to become that expert, and you have to gain that knowledge, experience, and wisdom. I agree. I think it can happen. And I think we all are, I don't know all, but I think that many of us are not so naive to think that somebody who's never been president before is going to be a great president on day one or month one or year one of their presidency. It takes time. You've got to experience the realities of the job before you get good at it.
Guyana and Czechoslovakia.
Oh yeah, that's where she was.
Yeah. So it's you got to do some work. You got to do some work regarding that. Well, you got to do some work. Clearly, you don't have to do some work in order to get the position. I mean, a lot of people can argue about Betsy DeVos, but no, she's not broadening her perspective. She's not there gaining wisdom. She's promoting an ideology and a mindset about education, not necessarily just to look at education as a profit center. I mean, if you want to, it's like, yeah, I'm going to work my way to vouchers so that, that all types of education goes in this direction. But it's unsettling, but that's what
it's unsettling because a lot of her beliefs and vision for education are really not so much in alignment with public education in and of itself. That's sort of the irony of her situation.
20 years as a diplomat.
Shirley Temple Black, 20 years.
Yep. Yeah, 19 years.
I'll tell you what, you gain a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and experience doing that. You do.
Well, you gotta like pay attention to get your butt on the court. I mean, it's one thing to get there and buy the seat for the front row and then say, hey, you're in. But when you're on the court, you got to start playing on the court. Now, many people crash there. They have one term.
Yeah.
They're there for 3 years. They don't have the ability to stay in it, and they tap out. Oh, Sarah Palin's a great example of that. She got there, she got elected, and then she tapped out. Out after 2 years of the Alaska position that she was in.
Yeah, she resigned from being governor, didn't she?
Yeah, she tapped out, man.
In Alaska, and she also hasn't stayed in politics. So she was really passionate about it and wanted to serve. She would still be serving. And interestingly, about coming back to Shirley Temple Black for a second, you're right that most ambassadors like that who were appointed to that position more because of who they are than what they knew, probably are there no more than 4 to 8 years. And when the administration changes, new guard comes in, is like, all right, well, I'm not extending her any more favors because she's not my person. But the only way, to me, she stays in the game is if she demonstrated ability, passion, and she was effective. 20 years doing that, that's going to span multiple administrations.
Yeah, I'm looking at the number. It was actually 25 years.
Oh, wow.
I said the numbers were wrong, and that's the thing to kind of like roll our roll our talk around expertise on this is that, hey, listen, you could get tapped in to go in, and you can go in there, and the question is, can you hang and expand into the person that is gaining knowledge as you go, using your experience, to, build a perfect practice, and then having the wisdom to say, I don't know. A lot of the great athletes, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, is, the two that come in my mind. Tiger Woods is the one that always gets me, is that after he finished the season, he started with a new coach to adjust to see if he can improve his stroke in a different way. It's like, dude, you just had a huge year. What are you doing trying to retool your stroke? It's like, well, he's looking for perfect practice. He's trying to make sure the lean is this way, the body position's this way, because you got to keep tuning the physical instrument in athletics. But the same is in politics, is you've got to tune into what's there and try to adapt inside that environment. And when things are the way they are, it's really hard to maintain a solid truth, of the experience. Very, 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 very difficult. So because self-worth, identity, politics get in the way. we're not pursuing truth. We're pursuing the win. And that allows cheating to take place. So it just happened. It's just like all of a sudden it just changes very quick. Anyway, so one of the things that's nice about this episode about purchasing truth regarding expertise is we've got to move beyond just the hope or just the faith. We've got to move into the implementation of restoring truth and trust from a position of being solid. You got to get back to there. So, and there are some people on the Republican side that are moving in that direction, going like, all right, we can't have the marketer in chief running this. We cannot have the brander in chief running this. We've got to rebuild the party based on some solid principles. And, personal accountability has to go back at the front of the Republican platform in order to make the small r Republican the big R Republican. Because right now, they're doing small r Republican stuff. They are not doing big R Republican things. And that's disheartening.
It's why we have so many Republicans more and more speaking out against the president and advocating actually for Joe Biden, the Lincoln Project being one, obviously, that a big organization doing that, making a lot of noise. And then there's actually another group that I read about recently. It's these three brothers who are, I think I sent it to you, Bill, at one point, but these three brothers that have created another advocacy and creating, ads and videos, and I'll have their name here in a minute. Starts with an M, but anyway, here it is. It's I found them, but I didn't find their names. Hold on.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, is that when truth is hung around hope and faith are great starters. I have faith. I have hope in this. They're a thing that starts the power of the intention. Yet if we're not building in or restoring, is this person a person of knowledge? Is this person a person of experience? Is this person a person of humility regarding and has wisdom? This is the reason why the sentence Trump has no empathy. Well, he doesn't have empathy because he doesn't pursue wisdom. In order to pursue wisdom, you have to be humble. In order to be humble, you have to share respect. In order to share respect, you got to be able to stand on the stage and be okay with what your role is, not to be the be-all, end-all, the only person speaking. Where are the doctors? They're in the back. Why are they not out here? That's not a wise thing to do, to be the only person talking.
No, it's not.
It's not the wise thing to do.
You talk about hope and faith. It's one of my mantras in business, and I would admittedly it's in business and in a lot of ways in my life, is hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a plan. And I'm not saying I never hope for things, but I hope for things.
It's a start.
That in reality, I have no control over. Okay. My point is, hope's not a strategy. If you want a certain outcome to be achieved, you can't just hope. You got to take action and make it happen. That's how I feel in business. By the way, I did find it's called Midas Touch, MEIDAS Touch. This is three brothers who, are doing similar things to the Lincoln Project. I'll have a link in the blog post just for those of you that were curious about that.
So I really appreciate this conversation today, Tom. I think that just taking out this spin regarding expertise, and when you're looking at something, if you're somebody that's listening to this podcast, or letting a little bit of this communication wisdom come out and go in a direction. I don't know everything about communication, but the thing that I do know is that I put my 10,000 hours in and I have sat in the room in high conflict mediations, and yeah, I've got some experience and I've got some knowledge about this. I've studied and got mentored and got some knowledge about some things. But wisdom allows you to have the experience to say, this is where I have something to offer in reference to the thing that's not being offered, which is truth. I would like that back again, please. I would like it back again in the political environment. And the reason why there's humor in this is because I'm adjusting my expectations to the environment. It's like I've got to contribute what my role is, until my role is I've moved from the stands closer to the front of the court to get on the court, because that's really a part of what our wisdom, knowledge, and experience gets you. Is get you shot, you get on the court, you get to run around a little bit, and you get to help people a little bit to adjust it. And you only get so much of a season that you get on the court. And then guess what? You turn your ankle, they tap you in, somebody else comes in, they want somebody else because somebody else has greater wisdom, knowledge, and experience than you do. And then you go on to your next role and your next identity, and you got to then just make some changes there. And again, put your new 10,000 hours in, and that's a part of self-development anyways. So Tom, thanks a lot for this. This has been a lot of fun, and looking forward to the next one. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Bill. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.